Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into Garden of Doom, and I am really pleased as punch this week. I'm always pleased. I love my guests, and a lot of them, as you know, are return guests. And this is in fact a returning guest. But it's been like over 3 years since we've had Kristaps Andersson from the Eastern Border on the show, and I'm really excited to have them on again. If you want to go listen to that show, and you should, it is entitled cleverly The Eastern Border. So you'll be able to check out the first show. And we were going to do, I think even during the course of that show itself, you'll hear us agree to do another show more, quickly. And a little something happened called the invasion of Ukraine. He's been a little bit busy. So he's coming to us. He is literally right now in Riga, Latvia. It's almost 1 a.m. his time. So first of all, let's say greetings, comrade.
Greetings, comrade. No, I don't have a thick accent anymore. But yeah, a lot has happened. The war, and then I got married too.
Yeah, that's good. Right.
A positive thing, yeah.
Right.
But it turned to a weird situation, really, because I just felt like it needed to be covered because that was a massive shock. But I'm really happy to be here back again, even though it's been a lot of time. However, it's really fun to just take a breather and just think about something that is, not extremely horrible events happening all the time.
Yeah, and I'm glad to give you that break. But before we get there, I do want to tell people who might not be familiar with you and your show. First of all, the podcast is called The Eastern Border. I am a patron. I have been for years. There's Patreon, there's donation, there's merchandise that you can purchase. Yes.
I highly recommend that stuff because it was such a pain to get the T-shirts running from Latvia. It was the shipping issues. I had the whole system set up, but I couldn't figure out the shipping. But now I do. And an important thing that I want to mention is that from the store, because it was a bit of a funny thing, because Igor Girkin-Strelkov, who is the guy who was responsible for MH17, by the way, the day that we're recording this, that's the anniversary of this sad event, but we have this, because he made this Club of Angry Patriots as a political organization before he got arrested. But I managed to get the thing trademarked as my own property in the European Union.
Nice.
So I get to use it legally. and all the profits that we get from T-shirts and hats with that logo on it, that goes straight to Ukrainian aid. I normally look at that. I know a lot of people don't want to support directly military causes, so I look at mostly demining because I've been in touch with that. So that goes there. It's for a good cause, not just for me, for Eastern War in general, because I feel like it's a bit close. That's a bit of a charity thing there.
Absolutely, and who can be against demining? I mean, it's one of the perennially most important things, and there's still mines in all sorts of countries. Anyway, so when I first met Chris, and it's easier to say Chris than Kristaps, it's funny because we know some of the same people. Mike Hilliard, who's been on the show many times, who I'm trying to get on again, but he's also gotten a lot busier, and a few others. Chris was, he's a journalist, and he was covering news from the eastern border, meaning Eastern and Central Europe. A lot of that was Russian focused, but not all of it, of course. And then all of a sudden the war started, and he became a war correspondent, and he is self-funded largely. His salary, his resources come from the podcast, which I know in the U.S., for most podcasters is unthinkable. Not unthinkable because it's too cruel a dream to have, except for, some who got lucky and some of the people who got in at the right time. And then, of course, if you're corporate backed, even then it's not a guarantee. I can't tell you how many corporate backed shows I've listened to that went away after here. Anyway, he is self-funded. It's a good cause. This show has been unapologetically pro-Ukraine, but even if you're not and you just want information from a different perspective, meaning not American, it's a great place for information that you're not likely going to get probably anyplace else. Here, I'm on an internet global podcast theoretically, but 65% of my listeners are in the United States, and probably have the remaining third, 2/3 of those are probably from Britain. So I guess here would be the Western English speaking world, but in any event, you all know what I meant. Anyway, so and Chris said it's okay, and he's mentioned on his show, he's been targeted for political assassination. There have actually been attempts on his life in, more than one way. And hasn't your car been set on fire and you've been poisoned and things?
Yeah, that's because I'm not much loved by Putin's administration, and it was a very weird situation as well, because the whole incident with me started when they started noticing me because I literally just mentioned that Putin might have body doubles, which is very much like how it goes, very much the theme of this show, because that was truly strange. I did not even know that someone would take it that seriously, but here we are now.
Here we are.
So, otherwise, yeah, it's been a bit rough, but it is what it is. Happiness is mandatory, as I like to say on my show, so it's fine.
Absolutely.
It could be worse.
Yeah, and I think I'll stay away from what it could be worse. Again, I was about to say here, but in the United States and everywhere, because things can always be worse. That's they always say, Winston, when you're in a hole, stop digging. But
I have a question to you, because I've been talking. If you've heard to John Michael Gaudier, and he very much does a lot of stuff about various extraterrestrial things. What have been your thoughts about the Congress investigations on this whole extraterrestrial alien subject thing? What do you think? Did something actually came from it? Because I, for one, know that they're doing this project. I think it was called Project Galileo or something like that, and they're investigating things. Have you felt it? Is the attitude changing towards this? Are people talking about this actively?
Well, those are two separate things. Project Galileo is actually by Professor Avi Loeb, who was the head, or might still be the head of Harvard's astrophysics department, or some department with that. He is the gentleman who took Oumuamua, which means scout in Hawaiian, and speculated that it was an alien artifact, maybe space junk from a ship, that it didn't move like a comet. Most of his peers disagree with him. He wrote the book called Interstellar. He wrote another, or Extraterrestrial. I should look over because I read it. He didn't come on the show, but his publicist sent me. It's Extraterrestrial. I'm sorry, not Interstellar. That was a fabulous movie. And he wrote another book more recently as well. So he's doing Project Galileo, and that is to search Earth for other artifacts, and also to search the skies for basically needles in a haystack, but basically by trying to aim telescopes in the direction where Oumuamua came from, on the belief that if there aren't that many civilizations out there and this one came from that direction, others would as well. So that's Galileo. As far as your question about Congress and other governmental investigations, I think they were largely lip service. I think they sort of got overtaken by events. But the one thing that was notable is that there were, they sort of cited, I think the conclusion was something like there were 133 or 143 events, of which there was a significant number, and I used to know the number of them, that they could not explain away, which I think was as big a disclosure as we're going to get now. Is there some top secret, eyes only clearance where people know more? I don't know. I'd like to think that there is, but I'd also like to think that there isn't. I've spoken to a bunch of people on all sides of this issue who are well versed in it, and a couple of them said, there's like Cliff Dunning who, wants to believe and does believe, but also believes that the government's holding things back, and all the governments are, and they don't believe that we could handle the thought of extraterrestrials. I mean, the citizens, everyone, the world. I actually believe more the people on and I'll get to what I'm saying, or what I'm trying to say. I more believe with this following school of thought, that if they can come to us and they can see us, they're so far beyond us that they don't really care what we think. I don't know if it's ants to a human, or if it's like, a mouse to a human, or whatever analogy you want to take. But it isn't like, the Spaniards, finding, Arawaks and Caribs in the Caribbean. It's not like, yeah, we know it's the same people, but we can sort of dehumanize them or take advantage of them. Oh, and by the way, they're not immune to any of the diseases that we're immune to, not that they even knew those words at the time, but, oh, wow, they're all getting smallpox, chickenpox, measles, and mumps and dying. And we don't. And there's lots of cool stuff here that we can take. I don't think, but if they did feel that way, if they can travel interstellar, they can probably take it without any issue. I'm also a pretty firm believer that if a UFO has lights on it, it's not a UFO. It's not from outer space. They don't need lights to see. They don't need headlights or turn signal lights.
That would make no sense, like, to have a searchlight or something.
Right. I'm pretty sure they have some sort of infrared and other way of seeing. So, and I've had a bunch of ufologists on all parts of this issue. So for those of you new to the show, just peruse the catalog. There's tons of UFO, from abductees to researchers to journalists to scientists, you name it. They're all here. What do you think?
Well, I, for one, believe that if they would want to do us any harm, we wouldn't be here right now talking.
Yep.
Because if they have been, if they exist, if this exists, then they probably haven't been. They probably have been around for such a long time and observing us or something. I believe that, like you said, it probably wouldn't be as Spaniards or something. I think it would be more like, our biologists. Like, we're interested in microbial life, and we have we have people studying those ants. I think that the most likely scenario is that we might have something. Again, if it exists, I'm very open-minded about this. I sort of, it's kind of my hobby to get myself interested about all this stuff. But I keep a reasonable mind. I really don't believe that there's little green men running around on Mars or anything. But reasonably speaking, I think there could be some probes in the solar system, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But they would be more like scientific endeavors, looking at us and looking at all the weird things that we do, because I don't believe that any extraterrestrials, if they exist, would have, like you said, any militaristic interest, because they're so far beyond us, but they would definitely have a scientific interest. I mean, hey, we would have a scientific interest if we discovered, I don't know, microbes on one of those Jupiter's ice shell moons, right? We'd go there, we would just shift our priorities and go there instantly and just, study everything that we could know about them. And I think, that would be the most likely scenario for any interest that we would present to such such advanced civilizations that could travel through the vastness of space. What I really don't, but that has made me think a lot, especially lately, because like Clark said, it's really, there are two opportunities. Either we are alone or we're not, and both are truly equally scary if you think about them.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what it is. Like I would for one like to and also if there is something in the solar system, this is scary because we're not in control, and if we're truly alone, then we would have to ask this question, why? And then we come to the Fermi paradox, and then that's a whole nother.
Oh, well, that's it. That's answered, easily by a lot of people by God, we're special, which actually, I guess is sort of comforting. The thing, for those of you who, okay, so this is Garden of Doom. I also have Garden Views. They're on the same feed. So if you're a subscriber, you probably listen to both. If you're not a subscriber, you pick and choose, and that's fine either way. Or maybe you are a subscriber and you just skip Garden Views. But one of the things that I've done there is I was speculating on the laws of space, coming from a place where I had no idea what the laws of space were and if there in fact were any. And now I've gotten to the place where now I'm a general counsel and a board member of the Space Court Foundation, which is a international tax-exempt, education-minded space court. But it's mostly for interns, to place interns and to help with figure out space policy, but mostly through placing interns in jobs with governments and companies that are engaged in space commerce or the space program. And I've recently been accepted as what they call it? An advisory member to the American Space Law Society. Now, at the date of recording this, which is July 17th, 2024, I don't yet know what that means because we have not had our introductory call yet to tell us what's expected of us in that. And I also had a call today. I'm not going to give her name because she didn't say I could, but I had a call today with a space attorney out of Tunisia, who's actually in Ireland, who is looking to sort of build some sort of, I'll just call it a conglomeration or a organization of people involved in space in Africa. And for whatever reason, reached out to me as someone who maybe can help, bridge the gap or be sort of a mediator or a facilitator to get some American and, other policymakers or lawyers involved.
Oh, nice. Congratulations. It sounds amazing.
It is. And the scary thing is that the space law world is so small that from 2 years ago, probably, where I first did my first interview with Holly Doremus, law professor at Berkeley, she couldn't stand me on the maritime laws, the laws of the sea. She definitely did not want to play my game as to what happens if a Bond villain builds a lair in international waters, who can stop them. And she didn't want any of that at all, not at all. And that's all I wanted to talk about, really. But of course, my Bond villain in my head was going to be extrapolated, not Thunderball, but more Moonraker. Anyway, so from there, where I was basically a blank slate, now at this point where I was speaking to this individual today, and they're like, "Do you know so and so?" And 3/4 of the times, I'm like, "Yes, they've been on my show. Yes, oh yeah, we haven't been able to schedule them yet." Yeah, so it's so small that even me, 2 or 3 years later. It's like if I ran for Congress as a junior congressperson, and all of a sudden 2/3 of the world leaders, instantly, which is not the way those things work. Anyway, enough about me. No one cares about me. We're not here for me.
No. It's important. I care about you. It's really good because we hope that you'll you've grown a lot. I'm really, really happy to hear all this stuff. Like, genuinely, for one, those are good news, and I like good news because
it is good news.
Hey, in this world that we live in, good news are like far and few between.
Well, you could also look at it
here. Well, you invited me to chat about ancient alien stuff, especially in Eastern Europe, which is what I'm actually prepared for. I'm married to a philologist. She studies language, and she specifically does all sorts of Baltic literary stuff. And if you do that, then you have to go through all of our ancestral folk songs and everything. And surprisingly enough, we really we share a lot in common with other countries of origin, namely with Lithuania and Estonia. But over here, it's been kind of a weird subject matter, so to speak. I studied through this whole. I think we spoke about this because we have these sacred ogrovs, which is traditional Druidic stuff, but we also have these stone circle things, kind of a weird thingies, and
Stonehenge.
Stonehenge is the like stone. I don't know, kind of tomb-ish things where you place your stones in a circle stuff a lot, and they're considered to be sacred in a way, in our traditional study time. But in a lot of these cases, those things, they're burned out. They're sort of places where things get burned. Somehow it's associated with fire a lot, which was a bit surprising to me because we really didn't have that much of a, in our historical tradition, we don't have a fire cult, so to speak. We don't have this idea that there's some sort of fire worship. Of course, we share a lot of our traditional beliefs with the Norse. I mean, we have different names for those gods, but it's kind of similar. We also have like a thunder god and stuff like that. But we don't really have this historically anything related to fire, except in places where you go and you burn stuff there with those stone circles. But that's like in the Baltics, we're a tiny part of the world. What really, really bothers me around is that I've read a bunch of, as you know, I've read a bunch of Alexander Dugin, who's currently chief political ideologist of Kremlin, and among his supporters on his boards, which I have to read because of my own work, there is a huge section about why, and again, this has been used for very weird reasons, and I'm going to go into the weird territory here because a lot of these places, they speak about how these ancient aliens came from the sky and just gifted light to Russians, which then they twist and turn into making Russians super special nationalistic people. It's some sort of Russian exceptionalism, except in a very weird form, which just I find confusing because how politicized all this stuff tends to get. But the big issue here is that there's so much mixed in between, so you can't really study the data things. And in a way, I'm kind of surprised because, I think that these people who somehow claim that they're special because ancient aliens arrived and came to their country and then made everything better, and now they're just better than everyone. Isn't that kind of like denigrating your own people's, your own ancestors' achievements in a way? I don't know really, but it seems to me that they're trying to give credit to aliens, and they don't even specify from where, though. It's just that they all seem to, on those weirdo boards, they seem to all agree that definitely they have this ancient place in Siberia, because, and I'm checking right now, because, I'm translating on the fly, sorry, because apparently the whole extinction event that happened with the massive volcano eruption, that was like when something in Siberia erupted a long, long time ago, that was actually some sort of a purge of and crafting of this specific civilization there, which I find kind of weird because in this kind of area, tying a massive historical extension, prehistorical, like ancient hundreds of millions of years ago, I think it was 150 million years ago, they tied this to ancient aliens, which is the first time ever where I've seen, people denying the historical age of something and then tying a massive extinction event with this and then claiming that, but that's a good thing because now we're special.
I love I love that the Eastern Russian version of it is every bit as weird as every other version I've heard, except that it's so long ago that it's, listen, I've heard other people speculate, but I've heard everyone speculate that humans, Homo sapiens, have been around for 100 million years. Never 150 million, but for the most part, like most people agree, somewhere between 200,000 and around 1 million years ago, give or take, a few millennia here or there between friends. That's when we became Homo sapiens or Homo sapiens sapiens, which, right now, all of us walking around were what's considered Homo sapiens sapiens. How much of a difference between Homo sapiens sapien and Homo sapien is probably in the eye of the beholder. Maybe some anthropologists can tell the technical difference. It probably has to do with the actual size of our brain and where our teeth are and aren't and things like that. And, at some point, maybe I'll remember to ask somebody that question, should I have an anthropologist on here? But usually when I have an anthropologist on here, they're usually also an archaeologist. I usually focus on that stuff. Anyway, but every myth, well, not every, but so many myths have to do with something coming down from the sky and making your ancestors divine to semi-divine. Sometimes it goes right and sometimes it goes wrong. But, even the Judeo-Christian, which is also Islamic, the Abrahamic religions, start with, there's a portion there where a bunch of angels came down to be the watchers, and some of them decided to get busy with some pretty women and had some offspring, and that's taken, entire lives of its own. And probably of the 240 shows I've done, I'd say at least half of them at least mentioned the Nephilim and things related. And this has been tied into Putin and some of his beliefs that from these Nephilim in some circles, some say it's alien, that there's good aliens and bad aliens, that in the rapture, if you rapture into the clouds, that's good. If you rapture and you see the grays in silver discs, UFOs, that's bad. But others, the Nephilim and the survivors of the Nephilim created the bloodlines. And one of those bloodlines is the Putanesca bloodline, of which Putin claims that he is a part of. And that brings us right back to the ancient aliens. Yours is just dated, 49 million, 490,000 years earlier than the other ones, which tend to be, more like 5,000, 6,000, 12,000 years ago, depending on which story you want to believe. Now,
that's called kind of idea. For one, I try to think that if you I understand that if aliens in prehistory would arrive someplace a bit warmer, I'd say. Starting a civilization up here so far north, when we are normally from much warmer places and warmer climates, that would be just interesting. And also, this place is just weird on its own. You spoke about the Tunisian lady. I had a recent discussion with an Algerian journalist who's next door to Tunisia, and he works for the BBC, but he's moved to Estonia now to cover our region. Okay. And apparently his biggest shock was something that we really didn't understand that other people don't have. See, in Latvia, our days and nights are very shifting in lengths, and we have right now in the summer, it just got dark, and it got dark slightly before 1 a.m. right now, because we are kind of close to the polar circle. And so in the summer, when we celebrate our midsummer, then we probably get about an hour, maybe an hour and a half of nighttime. But in the winters, we get maybe about just a very tiny bit of sunlight at all. And this person, he was just confused because he didn't understand how exactly do we actually get some sleep, which is why we have our thick curtains. But this whole thing ties into the fact that we have all this strangeness here and these weird things about just various daylight, daytime, nighttime, all these struggles. And the thing is that I think this also very much influences how you view all of these other aspects that are going on with both the ancient aliens and everything, and how it influences your myth. So if we're talking about aliens, we have to take into account that all stories, all myths and legends, they vary significantly between who's telling the story and how everything goes. The biggest issue is that, when you're looking at myths from, say, some African country, deep in Africa, and that when you look at like myths from over here, you have to be very careful, I think, to separate the facts that are coming from just the changes of geography and everything, how that impacts stuff. And I also understood that, like, for example, when I was in the States for my honeymoon, because I was in Texas and I also managed to go to roller coasters during a tornado alarm. That actually was pretty scary for me, because your tornado alarms, at least in the Six Flags over Texas, are exactly the ones that sound just like bomb alarms in Ukraine.
Right.
So that was a bit rough at the beginning, because a bit of flashback to things, but otherwise that was interesting. But I understood that a lot of cultural differences come from how we look at maps. Because if you look at a map of the United States, like standard map of that shows you the world, shows that the United States and Europe are about on the same level, while actually you're way more south than we are. Because to give an example, Austin, Texas is on about the same level as Israel. It's a very Mediterranean climate and country and everything. So those changes also need to be fixed. Because, like I said, when I do all this research, the biggest disappointment to me always is when you read some internet site or document that seems promising, but then at the end, then they kind of go off their own thing and say, oh yeah, but it's a shame because all of this was just geography stuff, and then you're disappointed. Some of the stuff is just really unexplainable. But again, we live in such a varied world that you'd think that. Which is why I'm getting to this very slowly. Sorry, it's just late for me.
It's my specialty is to meander.
The big thing here is that you would expect that all those myths and legends would be like very different, because of geography and everything, but they're not. We actually really share a lot of similarities between the legends and myths and stories of all people, of all over the world, and if our geography alone makes us have vastly different experiences of even how our day-to-day lives look like and how our weather works and everything, you would expect that there would be a bit more differentiation somewhere.
There are more similarities.
I think he's kind of a more kind of a pro argument there.
For the aliens, sure, that you've got a root cause, and that's why everything sort of seems a little bit the same, and that is a very Graham Hancock, von Däniken kind of explanation that there's a root cause. Now Hancock says it's because there was a prior human civilizations which were advanced not from the stars, and von Däniken says from the stars. I guess Hancock doesn't rule out that they got a boost from starfarers as well. But in any event, that is an argument pro ancient aliens, but it's also an argument pro some sort of divinity involved, that, whichever way you want to view it. There's very little distinction between, aliens and gods, in our definitions now.
Yeah, I agree with that, because if we're talking about this, then it's really unclear a lot of times, because in a way, all those civilizations, they view whatever unexplainable and mysterious have happened to them in the same light. Like if you read the various sources, then there is not much difference between realistically divine entities and an extraterrestrial, because again, sufficiently advanced technology is inseparable from magic. Again,
Arthur C. Clarke
again quotes. Yeah. But that's exactly how it should be viewed, in my opinion, because you can't really separate these two things that much. At least you can try, but I don't know. It's just weird. And there are some interesting tales, I think, because one of the theories that I've heard in a lot of these cases about aliens and what could they be if they exist, all this stuff, it was about how it might not be something from outer space. It just might be something that exists here on this planet that we just can't communicate with. I was this. What was the name? Ultra-terrestrials, like some, and people call them fairies or something. All that stuff. Things that exist with us on this planet that are just different from us.
A different realm.
Other life forms, yeah.
The heavenly realm, the Fey folk realm, a different dimension.
Yeah, the Fey folk stuff, especially because I watched a YouTube channel that was, I don't remember the exact name, but he was talking about some sort of panic that had happened in the late 19th century, I suppose, where strange men arrived and talked about flying contraptions and how they're going to experiment with them, and then they saw weird things in the sky, and then they never saw these men again, and it was kind of maybe not to scare people. Because again, this goes into this idea that if there is something out there, then obviously why now and how, but for one, you have to kind of think about what then could be the whole idea, because I find the idea of us sharing this planet with any entity that is not us but some sort of other thing that we might not know exists with us and has probably existed for all of our existence. I find that much more scarier than, say, extraterrestrials who have sent a probe and are now studying us. To me, that's the scary part.
I don't know if I find that scarier, but I find it more distasteful. I have to say, I don't even like the Multiverse of Madness movies in Marvel. So, and everyone who's been listening to my show knows that. So I don't even like British science fiction because it goes too far. Anyway, yeah.
I've only managed to watch, I think 2 Marvel superhero movies in my life.
That's okay.
That's it. I just so we share the same thing. I find them kind of silly.
Well, I should correct it for the sake of my reputation in the audience. I actually think that the first 20 movies or so together, not all of them, but together, is like the greatest endeavor ever done, and I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But
I should because I watched I watched the first Iron Man movie and I watched Doctor Strange. But if you say the first 20 in total are okay, then might give them a try.
Well, as a whole, because they all and actually they tie it together at the end. But ever since Doctor Strange 2, the Multiverse of Madness, like I think that almost something that's been good or okay has been the exception, not the rule, where before, there was your Iron Man 2s and Thor 2s, which stunk, but most everything was pretty good. Now most everything is pretty bad to insufferable. And part of that is because of the multiverse and different timelines. And now they had something in the Marvels where realities encroached, which it wasn't clear if they were introducing some third. Anyway, no one cares about this stuff. It's just that I agree with you that the interdimensional stuff, to me, I'm not, I don't want to hear about it. I know that there's quantum physicists who believe in string theory and that there probably are different dimensions parallel to us. And, but now Bigfoot has gone from sort of a, somewhere between a gorilla and a human to now some sort of intradimensional being that probably has extraterrestrial ties and has hyper.
Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Out of all the things.
Yes,
I would have never expected that one.
Yeah, that's why nobody can find them, because they pop into the fairy realm, into another dimension. They can teleport.
That is something straight from the SCP Foundation universe.
Well, this is America. We have it all, and we have it all in the Garden of Doom as well, which is wonderful. But yeah, so I feel like it was a while ago, but you started on the 150 million years ago, aliens came to a civilization. Oh, I remember my question was, so I've heard Ultima Thule, I've heard Hyperborea, I've heard Tartaria. Are any of those the name of that civilization, or is it just so long ago?
No, they use Tartaria for the most part.
Okay.
But they claim that the whole name has been sort of a kind of a Western imagination because of the whole Mongol thing. It was later renamed Tartaria because of the Tartar yoke, and they had to basically force it to be named differently. that's about it. But the Tartaria is used in this sense, yes.
See, I thought so. And I've had a show on Tartaria, but the more modern version of Tartaria is that somewhere around the turn of last century, so 1899 to 1900, there was mud floods which erased pretty much all of civilization. There was a complete reset, and everything that happened before that is mostly BS, and everything that we've been told since is a lie, and that's
I think that sort of kind of goes on because again, and I think we spoke about this 3 years ago. The most popular theory that all of this comes down from is that the whole Holy Roman Empire era is a fabrication by the West, apparently, because it's done so that the West would enlarge their own kind of greatness, and that's whole the Holy Roman Empire was an invention by the late 19th century monks out somewhere, which just I find strange, but okay. So people do strange stuff sometimes, but yeah, that whole mess is kind of well known, documented, because they fully believe. Because again, Dugin started out by writing about this, how the West has shifted this stuff, and weirdly enough, again, in a lot of these cases where you spoke about Tartaria being known and Ultima Thule and all this stuff, they explain how this happened by saying that it's just Westerners usurping proud Russian traditions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I find that kind of silly because that goes into the same category where Dmitry Rogozin, the person who used to run Roscosmos for a while, he managed to prove that he lacks some biological knowledge by stating that Russians have an extra chromosome because they have suffered so much. Having an extra chromosome is what gives you the Down syndrome. So he unintentionally basically offended most of Russian people, if not all.
Yeah, they would know that. Yeah, that is calling. I think the kids call that self-owning.
But I don't know. I still kind of don't understand how do you get stuff from there. But the weird part is, because I don't know anything about this, is I've just been sitting on these Russian forums. What is kind of do we have something like this in East Asia as well? Because I've heard stuff from everywhere, but I haven't heard about Eastern Asian ancient aliens. Like, so far on my map of weird conspiracy theories, that area is empty. I really don't know anything there. Maybe you can extrapolate on that for newer audiences and for me as well, because it just popped into my mind that I have no clue about any mention of this in, say, Korea, Japan, China, that parts of the world.
Well, the myths and legends and the religions and the magic are strikingly similar in lots of ways to many of the ones that we're familiar with, as far as Egypt, Greece, Norse, which is basically Scandinavia or Germanic, Russian, Slavic, Babylonian, Sumerian, Indian, these are similar, and the reason it's important that's different is because they're, at this point anyway, and for a long time, they've been two different language groups, Indo-European and Afro-Asiatic or Altai-Asiatic. Anyway, so as far as ancient aliens per se, I have to admit I haven't gotten enough people in East Asia yet to talk about it. I was just getting to the religions and the myths and the magic and stuff like that. However, a lot of the First Nations myths all start with star people who came down and either went back to the stars or went to live underground, or a little bit of both. Now, that's important because everybody that's in the Americas came from Asia, and a lot of that as well. Now it's Russia, but a lot of it is the Stans, a lot of it is China, Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia, and then there's some evidence that some folks may have gone from further south and skipped down into Polynesia and Australia and then made their way to South America. But that's a minority belief. Second, they still were Asian and probably, that vast Siberian, Eurasian steppe-based, various, we say there's three races. First of all, there's one race, but even if you go to, if you want to divide people by the way they look and skin color, there's far more than three races. I mean, the whole three race thing is from the 1800s, and one guy came up with that, and it's been used for nothing but nonsense ever since. And nonsense is being polite. But yeah, but a lot of the myths and creation stories and religions talk about it, and since so much of it is oral tradition, not a lot's written down. It is a little bit weird, I find, in this world that we give so much, that some people who don't believe anything from the historic era or the modern era so easily believe the oral traditions as being somewhat sacred and not regular things, what they're told in writing, while others, give oral tradition no stock whatsoever. And I would say that both are wrong. But if you just look at their myths, they're exceptionally the same. And it's basically, an ancient alien story, which is, some call the star people the star heroes. I've heard the Anasazi. There's actually a word Anunnaki in some language, allegedly. I'm not a linguist, but I've been told, but it means like ant people in Hopi or Dene, a southwestern First Nation or Native American language. Again, I can't personally validate any of this stuff. These are just things I've heard, but I succeed in getting people to talk to me about First Nation stories, but it's almost like I've been jinxed with that. I've been cursed. I mean, first of all, one of my guests who became a dear friend from being a guest on this show passed away recently, and he was going to go through a geographic regions, and actually he pre-recorded certain things, and his daughter is I think thinking about whether or not she wants to work on it and put it out there, and then B, she actually has to do it, and I'm absolutely not going to pressure her. Then I got a shaman to agree to come on, and he disappeared, but he reappeared, and then I found
that is a great story itself.
Well, I don't mean that he actually teleported. I just mean in my world, like he ghosted me, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I've been busy." And then another one who never responded said, "Yeah, I'm in." And at the same time, another gentleman who was expert in these areas agreed to come on the show. And then I told him what the platform was, and he's like, "I don't use that. You better do something better." I'm like, "Okay, well, we can do Skype, we can do message."
See, this is the thing. A lot of these cases, when we look at these alien studies, it's really, to a degree, it doesn't exactly matter if they're 100% true or not.
Right.
Because I listened to the recent Dan Carlin episode, and he said that if you think about like magic and everything, what matters is that people at the time definitely thought it all was true, and that has impacted how people act and how they think and how they view things. Mm-hmm. So I think the same goes for these ancient alien myths and everything. What's really interesting is how these ancient people looked at this and how it shaped their way of life, and it shapes everything until today. Because during this whole time, there was another shaman. Literally, there was a shaman that was basically he publicly stated that he's going to go to Moscow to get rid of Putin. Mm. He specifically stated that it's time to get rid of him before he causes more pain and more damage. And that was, I think, in 2021, just after I went on the show for the first time. But what happened was that he said he's going to go to Moscow, but he disappeared, for one, mm-hmm. and two, when he reappeared, he managed to get people who were his supporters to basically. He managed to get people people got enthusiastic about this. People started to actually take him a bit more seriously. But then what happened is that Putin arrested him.
Yeah, of course.
And his idea was that he was a shaman from all the way from Vladivostok, that's like near the Pacific coast, from that city, and he was just marching by foot to Moscow to perform a ritual in the Red Square to, as he put it, exterminate the bad demon spirits from Putin. And Putin, and he had a bunch of guys who were like, driving next to him. He refused to take cars. He needed to walk all the way. He was doing food and everything. And then Mr. Putin decides that, no, this is too much. This is too much. We can't have this sort of stuff going on in our country. So then he sends a Spetsnaz unit to just arrest the guy.
Right.
And if you think about it, that is very silly. That is a silly thing, but that affects people's lives. And sometimes, we don't think about this. We say, people hold strange beliefs. That's one thing, but when we now have Mr. Putin and also the whole previous Minister of Defense, Shoigu, he believed in all of shamanistic rituals because Putin has been participating in some of them in his spare time. So again, it comes down to a bit more than just talking about a lot of this ancient stuff, because again, it directly sometimes even impacts how we live today, how we live our lives today.
Especially if you're that shaman who's been picked up by the secret police. But I mean, Putin, whether you believe that he actually believes that he's the guardian of Eastern Christianity or Christianity, period, you would think that would be anti-shamanism, anti-magic, but every religious group has a mystical part of it and a secret society or a secret mystery school, which is on the good side of things. So while magic and these things generally bad, in their hands it's good, and it's like the Jedis. They'll get it to you when you're ready. Of course, to the good mystery school group, there's always also a bad mystery school group as well. So it's actually entirely and Putin, if I understand correctly, he is a bit superstitious, and if he does buy into this Putinesca line thing, that is tied to the Nephilim, which is essence magic. And if you do believe in it, how can you be so sure that it actually came from, whether your line came from good angels or after they were fallen and demonic, and whether it's demonic or alien or whatever. So maybe you don't want that, so looked into by anybody that you don't have under your thumb.
That is just kind of a weird, really thing. But
isn't it?
What I really don't understand is again how, like, I'm okay when people have theories and hobbies, but then all of a sudden they just start justifying. When you start justifying some sort of supremacy out of this, then that's where I cut the line and say, come on, no matter what exactly is going on, just having ancient aliens build your civilization is not a reason to declare that you're far superior than anyone else.
But, right. If anything, you needed help, and other civilizations didn't. Unless you were you were ancient Atlantis and brought civilization to everyone else. In which case, if you were so nice before, why are you so mean now?
Oh, because come on, comrade. Obviously, their whole place drowned.
Right.
You would be a bit bit nasty after that.
That's true.
But I presume the rent prices went up a lot because the remaining space was very, very
You couldn't get insurance.
Like bad stuff.
You couldn't get flood insurance anymore. It's nothing. It's like Southern California. You can't get insurance, or Miami. Okay, so the land was called Tartaria. The name has been corrupted ever since, but it meant something better, more glorious then. Were the people then, were the aliens, were they from a planet Tatar or Tartari, or did they call themselves the Tatars, or did they have a different name, or is that also lost to myth?
That thing, they changed that and this Anunnaki thing interchangeably for the most part. That's kind of the standard term for these ancient aliens. That would be the Anunnaki people. I think we've heard that term everywhere. I don't exactly remember which of those writers and authors who had these ideas.
Oh, I do.
Was like first one doing this? I was Graham, right?
No, it was Zechariah Sitchin who took the Anunnaki and gave it this whole story. Now, the Anunnaki, it is a real
Bible, right?
Well, it depends if you think the Watchers and whatnot were Anunnaki. No, the Anunnaki is Sumerian and Akkadian. Anu and Akka were like the heaven and water gods who, came together, and the Anunnaki were their children. Enki was one of, Enki and Enlil are like the two.
That's from the Gilgamesh epoch, right?
Exactly, which is Sumerian. So yeah, I don't remember where I was going with that, but yeah, that's the Anunnaki. I'm not sure if everybody. Zachariah Sitchin is the author's name that you were looking for.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing because while I was doing my research, the whole theory, the most interesting theory from my end, which also contains this stuff and is tied to this whole idea of Anunnaki, it comes from Finland, out of all places.
Finland?
Finland, because there was a writer in the 1920s, and I have a bunch of notes open. I can't find his name, but basically there was a Finnish writer who had declared that Finns are actually descendants of ancient Egyptians who just moved.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And he declared himself a pharaoh and wanted to do all this
excellent
Egyptian stuff. I mean, why not?
I was told, I read a book where somebody proclaimed that the word pharaoh in 3 different languages, Egyptian being one of them, meant star child, something like star child. Now, I later learned that an Egyptian pharaoh actually translates to great house, which makes a lot more sense. But if in fact it has dual meaning, and star child is correct in some Egyptian tongue, and in 2 other tongues, that would be a heck of a coincidence. But the Finns, that'd be cool. But there are, I think a Ukrainian Russian woman, Helena Blavatsky, is sort of the mother of modern, what she call theosophy or anthro.
Yeah, that was theosophy, and the famous or infamous, depending on your point of view,
right.
Aleister Crowley was kind of tied to her a lot in a lot of ways. This Blavatsky. That's also the reason why if you read some sort of novels, especially detective novels that come from the era, you always have these Blavatsky type names associated with that. Yeah, she played a huge impact in this whole thing, but she's absent from this study right now. Again, because of political reasons. You can't have even politically incorrect ancient aliens these days, and politically correct mysticism, at least in Russia. And I mean, she was part Ukrainian, so she's not one of the good people right now. So
well, she said that they were
forums, at least.
Yeah, in her, she basically took stuff from, all of the secret societies, the mystery schools, and created her own omni-myth and proclaimed that it was correct. It might be as anyone, but she also had 5 root races, and one were the Polarians, who you'd think that's who the Finns would claim they were, because they're sort of polar, and they were sort of, your tradition sort of elven, silver, like the Targaryens from Game of Thrones, or the elves literally from Lord of the Rings, all looking like, Orlando Bloom as Legolas, that way, tall, angular faces, silver hair, pointy Spock ears,
One thing, by the way, that recently crossed my mind, because my wife now works at a zoo, and she's, because again, her hobby is weird animals. So we have a pet snake and 5 pet tarantulas now.
Oh, okay.
Long study. But the important part is that we talked about how we have this fear of black eyes. Large black eyes is a constant fear, and in a lot of these cases, if you Google that one up, you'll see owl babies. How baby owls look like. They can walk like upright sometimes, and they have these black eyes, and they look weird. And then we came to the question, but why would we be afraid of owls? And then I watched the nature documentary, which said that owls hunt on baboons. They hunt baboons. Like, there are very huge owls living in Africa, and they hunt like baboon babies. And baboons they are sort of ish related to us in a way. And I thought, hey, doesn't it kind of make sense if you think about it, that there possibly could be some prehistoric owl-like creature that would have, hunted us in a way.
Or it's just a DNA memory from when we were similar to, Homo erectus and then some of the other pre-Homo sapien humans were a lot smaller, and Homo erectus baby probably was just as vulnerable as a baboon baby, maybe more so. Who knows?
Because the documentary was about how they, I think it was like, I don't remember exactly that one. Because again, sorry, but how these monkeys, they now have like spotting units, and they look at the side of that, and these owls, they like fly over and they see if the given kind of unit of these monkeys, if they have a spotter or if they don't have a spotter. If they have a spotter, they don't even attack you at all. They wouldn't eat those. Then they just wait until for an easier meal basically. And I think that might be one of the weird reasons. But then again, we also have weird feet. That's an interesting thing. But we have weird theories of people being afraid of various things that really I find hard to explain. But again, I don't know. It all might be totally wrong, and I might be just a bit silly for giving this too much thought. But I just find it interesting how we try. Like, I find it interesting that we sometimes don't even try to figure out how all this could possibly fit together, because people tend to just believe all sorts of stuff. Because I went to Texas, and I went to, of course, the Dealey Plaza, and apparently there are people whose only job there is to go and sell you these brochure pamphlets with their very specific theory of why Kennedy was assassinated.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I bought one. I have that as a souvenir. It's my favorite souvenir from America. It's amazing. And I just wonder, like, you've spoken to these people. What? It's super late out here. I'm very sorry about it.
It's okay.
I'll just read this. It's almost 2 a.m. Why would... Okay, I don't know. But I just wanted to ask you... Okay. I just wanted to ask you, is there something similar with like, ancient alien sites? Like, do you have, like, Jan Hancock or some people... do you have something similar going on in the sites where ancient aliens are happening? Because, I don't know, it seems that if there are people constantly sitting around the Kennedy assassination, Dealey Plaza place, and just making money selling their theories and brochures, do you have such people around in places where ancient aliens are rumored to exist?
There are. But you have to look for some of them. Roswell is pretty obvious, but it's Air Force Base, so it's very hard to get. You're gonna see a fence, and you're gonna be in the desert, and that's all you're gonna see. But there's museums and stores and stuff, where they're allowed. In other places where there's rumors, there are, certainly there's regional, but as far as them being big sites, Chaco Canyon, Skinwalker Ranch, but a lot of this is sort of more nouveau, and you have to sort of go with tours led by people who are in this, I'm going to say industry, without it being a pejorative, whether you think it's P.T. Barnum or a legitimate tour guide, I don't care, it's fine. But you sort of have to go, like, we in the United States, despite us having plenty of things here like Cahokia and the Serpent Mound and U.S. U.S. based pyramids and there's like a Stonehenge in Lake Michigan and there's a Salem Woodhenge and there's all sorts of things that are sort of local spots. We're still a little bit obsessed with the pyramids in Egypt, the Sphinx, finding Atlantis, Machu Picchu, and the Maya, and Easter Island, and pretty much everything. Speaking of pyramids, isn't there like a giant pyramid in Serbia and some pyramids in Russia, or is that more
about Serbia and stuff? In the Balkans, not just Serbia, but all over the Balkans, there are these weird sort of pre-ancient Rome.
Let me break in for a second, because Americans, and again, 2/3 of my audience are American. We are terrible with geography. So,
Balkans is where Serbia is, Croatia, like imagine Italy, right? There's this tiny little sliver of a sea called Adriatic Sea. On the other side of that, it's kind of like that part.
Right. It's sort of like right of Greece and left of Turkey. When you're in Europe, that's sort of the Balkans, but above them are...
The peninsula where Greece is, and it goes from like, a lot of people will, what was Yugoslavia once? That thing.
Right.
That part is the Balkans. And they have some very weird stone mounds.
But you're in the Baltic, which is much more further north, and people confuse the Balkans and the Baltic all the time.
Yeah, I know.
And
which is why I feel sort of sometimes bad, because people just love to mistake all this stuff. But yeah, I've seen this whole thing, because I've been there, and yeah, they just have this. They have this weird thing where they can't explain what those things even are, but they don't even know if they're tools. They're just like I'll switch my mind to Imperial modes.
Good.
Okay, it's about 1.5 to 2 meters, which would be about
7 or 8 feet.
Wait, 3 feet. 3 feet is about a meter approximately.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about 4 to 6 feet tall white slabs, which are kind of like engravings of them, but they're not apparently tombs because they're not on grave sites. They're just randomly, they're all over the place. So, and no one really by now knows what they were for, what they depict, because they were there from pre-Roman times, and due to how Balkans have functioned, it's not surprising that they have this mystery remaining, because a lot of knowledge that region has been destroyed because they've had wars happening all over them. Most recent one being their own civil war, because they have the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, all this stuff. They just don't know. They just don't know that what exactly went down there, and that's one of those biggest mysteries of this region, specifically over there in the Balkans, I find kind of interesting because they're a tourist object. People go to them and take pictures with them and everything. It's just that they like no one knows what they're for.
Yeah, and I only know about these things from being in this world through Garden of Doom, and I say the Serbian pyramid, thinking that everyone's going to know what it is, but I don't even know if it's a real thing or it's just something that someone here made up, put an image of it, and said that's the Serbian pyramid, that's the Alaskan pyramid, that's the Antarctic pyramid, that's the Russian pyramid. But my understanding is that there are these pyramids, whether they're the size of the pyramids in Egypt or the size of a pyramid that I made on the beach.
The one in Siberia is a giant. The one in Siberia exists.
Mm-hmm.
That's the site and the southern Siberia, but it is huge.
All right.
It's more like sunk into the earth, and it's covered with earth and grass now. But we know that there's a sort of a man. Okay, I say man, but most likely man-made structure out there, because I really don't think that pyramids are like I think pyramids are man-made, because it would be just kind of silly, because I respect ancient Egyptian engineers with that part. Now Sphinx is a weird stuff, because apparently the latest data I've read, it sort of shows that it's supposedly way more ancient than the pyramids, which I have no idea, but all sorts of pyramid is a shape. I think we humans love our shapes. Mm-hmm. The same as with pareidolia. For a long time before we got better pictures, we all saw the face on Mars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which then turned out to be just a shadow.
Aww.
However, that spawned some very good lore, and including video games like the first XCOM series.
Yeah. When you were talking about the owls earlier, I was thinking about the harpy owl, which, if you've ever seen the silhouette of a harpy owl, those things are like 5 feet tall. And if you see them at dark, it looks like a monster, like it could be Lilith or a vampire or whatever it is. Now, I don't think they come as north as the United States, but I do believe they get as far as north as in Mexico. But climates we're different at different times, and like you said, some memories are more ancient than others, and just wired in. But on the man,
some of this fear, I think, is like just written in our DNA.
Snakes.
Snakes are one.
Yeah.
Well, for one, I like my snake. I have a corn snake now, but they're nice. Snakes are one thing. Other thing which I find interesting is this uncanny valley, as it's called, when something is kind of resembles a human a bit too much, but it's not a human. Like if something resembles a human, but not quite, not exactly, we're afraid of that, and we're afraid of that no matter where in the world you are. We have this weird feeling, when you see these robots that I don't know Boston Robotics makes or something, or you see a robot that tries to mimic a human, but you can tell it's a robot. That makes you feel uneasy, and I always wondered what's up with that, because that's a thing which I haven't, because I like studying my fears and phobias, and I haven't found an idea about why do we have this fear of something that looks human, but we know that it isn't.
Well, when you get
that's
to that,
the most interesting aspect there.
Well, when you find out, you'll come back on the show and you'll tell us your findings.
When I'll have the time for that, not about the show, but when I'll have the time to
figure that out
on that one.
Well, what I do is I cheat. I find somebody like you that's a guest that already knows the answer, give it to me, and then I go on and I pay it forward. On pyramids, somebody explained to me, it's actually the easiest structure to build. It takes very little engineering. You don't need, it's not weight bearing. There you go. Your kids do it on the beach. People just made it bigger. Okay. I've had an architect David Getson, I think. He was on the show twice.
David.
Yeah. Small world.
Nice. For the people, I think I introduced you to.
I think you did too.
David was on my show where we talked about architecture in Latvia. But it was nice. It was like, I listened to that episode. Oh man,
he's terrific. So we talked about the pyramids, especially in Egypt. But for rank marketing for future and for new listeners, I have 2 archaeologists coming on in the near future, and it's been hard to get archaeologists to talk about pure archaeology. I've had people who are archaeologists, but I've had them talk about all sorts of things other than archaeology because they're more interested in that. But I have one of them is Dr. John Hoopes, Hoopes, and he is, I sold him on coming in. Listen, I know that you want to talk, you like debunking Graham Hancock stuff, so that can be, whatever you want to talk about. And he's like, cool. And then I have Ed Barnhart, who is the science editor on Earth Ancient. So, he has an open mind, but he's actually going to talk more about First Nations things. But I'm sure that we'll get into some But John White, who's a linguist and a mythologist from Craigenford, he did a lot of debunking as well from his perspective. So everything's welcome in the Garden of Doom. I'm okay with the aliens. I'm okay with the angels. I'm okay with the demons. I'm also okay with the bunkers. And let the audience decide.
I'm sorry. I just know my Russian stuff, and as this is my hobby, I'm just trying. Like I said, I have done a bit of thinking about this because I listen to a bunch of these theories before I go to sleep, including your show, by the way, including Garden of Doom, because you have a very soothing voice. I have to give you credit for that.
Thank you. Yeah, listen, I take no. There are lots of podcasts I listen to. There are people I've listened to for a long, long time, and sometimes I put it on to go to sleep, not because the shows are boring, but because I know the voice sounds familiar. My brain will process it, and it will allow me to drift into lullaby land, and there's nothing wrong with that. Listen, I don't care if you listen to Garden of Doom to go to sleep, just listen to it. Now, anyway, so there are going to be future shows like that, but let's not let Jeff hijack his own show. I've got Chris Stepson probably for not much longer. You got to be fading pretty soon. So what else is like weird and ancient, alien-y and scary and monstery that's sort of
the biggest thing is our werewolves. That's a weird study. What?
I love werewolves.
Well, that's well then. Welcome to the Eastern border. We have werewolves. Literally, where we are for werewolves, the same thing as from what Romania is for
vampires.
Romania is for vampires. we are for werewolves.
Excellent.
Because a lot of them come from like our region, especially Lithuania, because of our thick forests. Because if you look at the map, then you'll notice that we are historically prime werewolf territory.
Excellent.
So that has been great. And there's a lot of specifically myths and legends about how people will just go through some sort of a big root of a tree and then switch to a werewolf mode, basically. That's a thing. And I find that fascinating because we have these, if you look up Coronian Dune, I suppose we call it Koshukapa. Oh, I will now quickly look up. Oh, it's called Coronian Spit, and there are these fern trees there, which are really weird looking. It's that little strip of land that stretches from Kaliningrad to Lithuania. I will just message you that. Yeah, the Coronian Spit. It has the weirdest looking trees ever.
Cool.
Like, objectively weirdest looking trees because either of the wind or something. Because there are theories about that, and I think that might have actually started one of these werewolf studies. You should probably look into that. That's the weird part, since we've also been tied to all these forest things. In our ancient traditions, we had a god named Medena, which was often depicted as a naked lady riding a bear. So in our myths and legends, we are not really afraid of we're not afraid of snakes in a way in Latvia. The same as we're not afraid of spiders. The spider is traditionally considered a blessing in the house. You are not allowed to kill spiders in Latvia. That's bad luck. It's an omen. You don't do that because spiders eat flies, I suppose.
Yeah, I've heard that. I mean, not just because spiders eat bugs and things like they're worse for you, but I've heard that spiders are good luck, and I wonder if I've heard that from people that are from Eastern Europe. I don't know. That's interesting.
But the weirdest thing besides these werewolf legends is which I had to mention due to how prevalent they are, is that there was a company called Tele2, which is a telecommunications company. They basically provide you cell service, the biggest cell provider in the Baltics.
Okay.
And they run an ad campaign called Meteorite, which they built a whole they built a whole thing with how they function and everything. And the weird part is that they dug an actual meteorite pit and burned it all out, and basically everyone was surprised because they did like an ARG, the alternate reality game, they had a website with mythic text with like very old mythology text on it. No one knew what it was about. They had their own like web they never mentioned this, but basically they used and it's about how all these myths and legends influence our today's life. They got fined about like a couple of €1,000, which is a tiny amount of money because they didn't do that much, but they dug out a fake kind of a crash landing site at the end, and that was all just intended to advertise their new tariff monthly payment plan called Meteorite, which would give you unlimited internet for just €20, which was cheap. But they played this up for a month.
Wow.
For a whole month, they went on and just advertised their thing. So you don't have to look far, because that was a massive scandal. I found it funny and in good taste, because we really have. I have to give you credit. You have much better advertisements than we have here in Latvia, because in the EU you're not allowed to directly mention a competitor and say that your product is better than theirs, which does happen in the States, because I saw Vendi's ad while I was driving, which said, "Don't give your money to the beaver." An obvious reference to those, what was that thing? The Buc-ee's, right? So we can have that one here.
The Buc-ee's.
I think that was those Buc-ee's, yeah, Buc-ee's, the big beaver thing, it's big in Texas.
Oh,
that was just a weird thing, because if it's not an advertisement, we're monetizing this stuff, so that's just great.
Yeah.
And also another thing that's great is the fact that I mentioned this before we started recording. He's wearing a Baltimore Orioles shirt on.
That's right.
And I do have to say the Maryland flag is the best best state flag in the United States. I have one. I was sent one. I love your flag of Maryland.
I agree. It's not the usual like colors. It's like the crests of like the families that had the original land charter. So it's probably the most interesting flag there. But yeah, Maryland's great. Love Maryland. Very happy to be here. I'm a New Yorker originally, although it's been like almost 40 years that I've been in. Well, since I've lived permanently in New York, that we'll just leave it that way.
Yeah, sorry about my weirdness. Again, we just tried just very late, but I did my best. I hope you find this interesting enough, and that we can talk again later when I will finally do my research. And I sincerely hope to be able to see Bigfoot sometimes. I'm just very sad that it has moved interdimensional beings.
Yeah, it makes things a lot more difficult. But maybe when we get LiDAR in Antarctica, we can find the Bigfoot, the secret Bigfoot clubhouse is under there somewhere.
No. But before I go, there was this one last thing. I recently, again, they're now going to have olms in Latvian Zoo. And olms are among the weirdest creatures out there. You know what axolotl is, obviously, right?
An ocelot, like a small jaguar.
Yeah, that thing that came from like one lake in Mexico, but now has spread all over because it regenerates. Well, apparently in Croatia, they recently uncovered a weird cave system where these olms live, and those are also salamanders, which don't age. They live for a very long time. They can live for over 100 years, but they move for about 10 meters per year, maybe. They live in total darkness, and they just don't move at all. They look like they sort of remind. They are similar to axolotls because they look somewhat similar, except these ones are bigger, about a meter tall, but they're the same color and everything. And it just that is just the weirdest thing.
Wait, what's the original animal? Because I said ocelot, and that's clearly not what we're talking about.
No, axolotl. That's a little tiny amphibian living in the lakes of the cutesy animal that kind of can regenerate limbs and everything. It lives in the lake in Mexico.
Gotcha.
Axolotl, I think. But yeah, like you said, a lot of people we have to study our history and our myths, but what we also should do is just sometimes take wonder in the whole natural world that we also have.
Absolutely.
Not all very doomy, weirdly conspiracy things come from outer space or are necessarily alien. We just when you're overwhelmed, just look at sometimes you can look at nature and just relax with that. That's plenty weird as well. And our planet in total, we haven't seen anything like that in space, and we've studied a lot. So maybe we should just appreciate us from a big spacey standpoint as well about how special actually the Earth is too.
Yes, we should appreciate the Earth.
And that alone, by the way, could be a reason why, if there is anything out there, they could be studying us, because so far from the scientific research, seems as we're pretty unique for a planet out there, But yeah, I just wanted to end this on an optimistic note, because after all, happiness is mandatory.
You know what? I'm not even going to impeach you on that one, because Garden of Doom, happiness is not always what we're going for. But since you are here in honor of you, yes, in fact, happiness is mandatory.
Just for today.
Yes, just for this show. Chris, I know we've talked about a bunch before, but just tell everyone where they can find all your stuff and how they find you.
It's called The Eastern Border, and you can just type it in your search. Just add podcast at the end of it, because if you just type The Eastern Border, probably you won't find it there. And also what you can do is you can look for my stuff. Also, I recently published an article on Foreign Policy magazine, for which my aunt went to Russia, by the way. So, because I'm not allowed in there, but I wrote an article which was published, I think it was yesterday or the day before that, about the average Russian things about the war. So you can find me there, on Foreign Policy magazine occasionally, but mostly on the Eastern Border podcast, which is theeasternborder.lv, or just YouTube, Spotify, wherever. Just type in the Eastern Border podcast, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And please, to all of you who will come from my show, subscribe to Garden of Doom. This is a great show with a great host, and thank you for having me here.
Oh no, it's a pleasure, and thank you for that. And I think on that mutual admiration note, it's probably a great time to go. But I will ask you this: do you have any particular outro song that you associate with, like what we've talked about, the that we should play as the outro?
Oh wait, let me check.
You can send it to me. Don't worry about it. You don't have to.
No, I wanted to. I'll just find this one.
Okay.
It's
while you're doing this, I want people to know that like all of the cool people who are out there. Dan Carlin, Sebastian Major from Our Fake History, Mike Hillier from The Red Line, David Getson, as we talked about, you introduced us, the host of History Impossible. I mean, all these people, they all love Christoph. They all love him more than they love me. Check out his show. It's okay. I'm okay with
it now.
It's okay. I prefer that.
I send you this. Oh, here's the chat. I'm giving you a song, which is it's a Latvian folk song. It's made by it's a rock version of a folk song, and it's made by a band called Tautumēdis, which means folk ladies, I suppose. Ladies, like a traditional name for women here. And that song is "The Night of the Witch," which represents
Baba Yaga
summer festival, and how I mentioned Medane and all this stuff that we like our forest witches, and that's about how. And that's about how they in the Midsummer Night every woman turns into a witch, and how they're blessing their homes with prosperity and everything. So there you go. Listen to it. It's pretty fun.
And folks, that's the next thing you're going to hear. Thanks a lot for listening. Check out the Eastern Border. Support him if you can. And if you're new here, please subscribe to Garden of Doom and Garden Views. Check it out and listen. And if you like it, tell like 10 of your friends, because nothing makes me happier. A little validation goes a long way in my world. Anyway, folks, happiness is mandatory. Chris, get some sleep. And whoever that is that's yelling in Riga at this hour, tell them to stop.
Okay. Thank you, man.
Sadurti līgo, izskaptēmi no sagriezti līgo.